are continuing the boost control discussion here where we left off last time. Pretty much showed you guys how to set this graph up, with very base values, basically just setting it to 50 for simplicity, and then going down in here into the boost target comp and building this line to work off of this table. So just to keep things moving forward here, let's assume that you end up plotting this line and it looks something like, let's set this to 50. Actually, no, realistically, let's set that to 40, okay? And we'll come down in here, and this right here, okay? Let's say that you've done your logs, and you can target whatever you want from your spring pressure up to 20, 22, 25 pounds, 30 pounds, whatever your particular system will make with whatever spring you have. And it's close. It's within a half pound, okay? Either way, you can target whatever you want. You can go in here to your advanced boost, and you can say, you know what, in first and second gear, I want 13 pounds, and second gear I want 16 pounds, and third gear I want 16.4 pounds. I don't know if I actually did that right, yeah. 16, yeah, that's right. Let's just set that to 18. And then fourth through the rest of my gears, I want 22 pounds, okay? And in each gear, you do a log. It shows, well, you're in first gear, you make right on the money, 12.9 pounds, 12.5 pounds. And you shift into second, you keep doing your pull, 16 pounds, almost right on the money. Third gear bumps it right up to 18. Fourth gear and on, 22 pounds on the money. Great, awesome. Okay, so now what we're going to do is go back in here and start looking at, well, it's great today. What about tomorrow? What about 2 months from now? Okay, well, this is where your air duty maps start coming into play. Okay, now, again, you guys that have watched my other videos, this is stuff that we've covered before. It's just different terminology. This is boost air for boost air duty. This is the exact same graph as our ignition versus idle graph. It's the same thing. So what we're going to do is, let's say we are negative on our, we're 2.5 pounds under what we're targeting. We're targeting 16, but we're only making 14.5. What we're going to do is we're going to take this point and we're going to move it up to, say, I'm trying to think of a realistic value here. Let's call it 10, okay? And okay, we're 2.5 pounds above where we're supposed to be. We want to take duty cycle out to lower our boost level. So let's take negative 12 out here. I'm usually more aggressive on this side of this graph. Reason being, it's always better, in my opinion, to be a little under your boost target rather than over your boost target. So what we're going to do is, let's see, we set that to negative 12. We'll set this one to negative 18, and we'll set the remaining guys over here to negative 25. Okay. So what we're done is, if you're over your boost target by 7.5 pounds, we're pulling an additional 25% duty cycle out of, let's see here, of either, it can be either out of this graph or this graph. It doesn't matter. Either way, it's pulling 25% out of these two combined, okay? And then, I want to get larger here. If we're, this is just the inverse of this side. If we're not making the boost we want to, we're going to set this to, okay, so what we've done is we've created this offset. So if we're making too much, it pulls some out. If we're not making enough, it adds some in to get us to where we want to be. Okay, that's a pretty generic map. Again, these are all going to be dependent on your particular setup for the values you end up choosing and using and what works best for you. That's a pretty good starting point. Make sure whenever you've done this you have to go back over here, and if you do this, and let's say you set this at 8%, okay, no matter what you've done here, it's only going to allow you to do 7.8%, okay? So what you want to do is you want to match this value to this graph. Same thing with the negative. Down here we've got like negative, what is this, negative 25. So we'll set this at negative 20, negative. I'll just hold it. There. Negative 26, sure, close enough. Okay, so now what we're doing is we're starting to build our, think of this as like an O2 feedback on top of our base fuel map and our boost compensation table. And now we're starting to factor in the icing on the cake, okay? It's right today. All this is right today. I can target whatever I want. It's awesome. What about tomorrow? What about when it's colder? What about when I, go up or down several hundred feet in elevation? Is it going to change? This is where we're starting to get into, making sure it's the same, consistent, day to day to day to day. What separates a good tune from your average tune, okay? So, proportional gain, integral gain. The proportional gain, think of proportional gain as the amount of error that you want to correct, okay? And think of the proportional gain as a multiplier to reach the error, okay? So let's just use, we're going to use very simple numbers here. 1, okay? The integral gain is basically the accumulation of the proportional gain error over a short period of time, okay? Now, a lot of times, you can get away without, you can set both of these to 0 and get away with doing something like this, setting your min and your max, and you shouldn't need to worry about the frequency. That's almost every single Mac valve out there runs off of that. The Apexes, the AEMs, the generic ones, they're pretty much all the same. The proportional gain you might need to mess with. You might need to go 1 or 2 or something like that. Probably 1, because the larger the value you get, you'll get overshoot and undershoot a lot, and it starts doing too much. Same thing you'll see in idle. Whenever you start doing those crazy feedback rates and update rates. But anyway, so we're going to do a proportional gain of 1, and it's going to help achieve exactly the amount of error that we want to make up for, whether it's positive or negative. So that's pretty much how all that works. Again, those are numbers that you're just going to have to play with. Good thing to start them at 0, get all this working right, and then if you have to change these, change these. If you can leave them at 0 and it works great, perfect. The only other thing I'm going to touch on here is, I mentioned in the previous video, what you can start doing is stacking these graphs on top of each other. So let's say you've got 76 millimeter. That can be pretty torquey, pretty violent on a 2JZ, and you start down here in first and second gear up to third gear. You're still below 100. So in fourth gear, you'd be targeting, what are we at, 22.1, and you start getting 120, 140, things like that. What you can start doing is, after you're in about the middle of your gear, where you've gotten past that crazy torque curve, you can actually start adding a little more boost into there, and it becomes this gradual increase of boost. So if you're at this vehicle speed, you obviously have to be in this gear or this gear, okay? You can't make it in third. You could. You don't want to. But instead of targeting 22, you're actually now targeting 27. 2 plus 22, or I'm sorry, 24. 22 plus 2, you're actually now targeting 24. So you make more boost with more speed, and you can add it in without having this crazy power delivery. It's a very primitive form of traction control, if think about it that way. But anyway, you can do it with VSS, you can do it with RPM, you can do it with TPS, you can do any combination you want of these things, and just know that they all stack on top of each other. That's pretty much it for boost control. Just look at your logs. You can look at target. Make sure that your target is where you want, whenever you're doing your log, and then it will tell you the appropriate boost target compensation in between this map and this map, and it will tell you where it's actually at, and then it will also tell you your error, whether you're up or down. And if you log this page, it will give you all of this stuff in a log, along with your O21s and all that kind of stuff. Okay, I think that's it for boost control. We're just gonna start getting into ignition on the next video, and that'll be a couple videos all on its own, which will not be near enough to cover everything. It'll just be a brief introduction, but it'll give you guys a decent starting point. Okay, see you in the next one.